Welcome to this GCSE History Pearson Edexcel video. This is one of the series of student walkthroughs, and in this video we'll be looking at paper 3, the modern depth study. In particular, we'll be focusing attention on section A, but we'll also be giving you some general guidance about how you can approach this paper. My name's Ben Armstrong. I'm a subject specialist working with Pearson Edexcel, specialising in GCSE History.
And I'm Katie Matthews. I'm the Deputy Lead History and Senior Consultant for Harris Federation, and I work with GCSE students across London and Essex.
In this video, we'll take a quick overlook of what paper 3 looks like. We'll also give you some top tips of how you can approach the modern depth study, and then we're going to focus our attention on section A of the paper. We'll look at section B in a follow-up video. So Katie, could you take us through what paper 3 looks like, please?
Of course. So, as you rightly said, this paper is split up into two sections. We've got section A, which we're going to cover in this video, and section B, which we'll cover in a later video. So section A is worth 16 marks in total, and that's roughly about 33% of your overall grade. So you want to bear that in mind when you're kind of using your time throughout the paper. What you've got is 4 different options, so don't worry if some of the examples we use today is not topics you're studying, but just bear in mind that there are 4 different options available, and that's Russia and the Soviet Union, Weimar and Nazi Germany, Mao's China, and the USA. So how are each of the different topics structured then, Ben, across the paper?
Well, this paper is a little different to the period study that you'll have done for paper 2. And we've tried to show it on the screen. The key difference is that this topic is not purely chronological. What we mean by that is that you won't be learning about topics that all happen one after another. Some of the topics you'll learn about happen at the same time as other key topics. We've shown that with USA and Germany. For example, if you're studying the USA option, and remember there's 4 different options, don't worry if you're not doing USA, key topic 1 happens first, and then key topic 2 happens after it. But then key topic 3 is events happening at the same time as the events in key topics 1 and 2. And key topic 4 also overlaps with key topics 2 and 3. What that means is that some of the events you're going to learn about in different key topics happen at the same time as each other. So you need to be quite clear on your time frame. Similarly with Germany, key topics 1 and 2 happen at about the same time. They're happening alongside one another. And key topics 3 and 4, they're also happening in the same time frame. So it's very important that when you're revising this, you understand how the events fit into the chronology of this unit so that you don't get mixed up if the questions have dates. So what are some top tips for approaching the modern depth study? We have a list here of some key points that might help you to approach this exam. So the first one, make sure that your answers focus on the question. And that's a great tip for any exam, but it's really important on this paper. If you focus on the question, then you'll make sure that your responses meet the demands of the question. Similarly, I already mentioned the importance of understanding the time period, but it's very important that when you see the dates in the question, you focus on the right period. So you're not talking about examples that don't fit the dates in the question. You're going to see on the exam paper examiner's advice. Things like in section B, it says use both interpretations. Well, if it says use both interpretations, it's really important to do that. And we'll cover this more in detail in the second video about section B, but we will be talking on this paper about sources and interpretations. It's really, really important that you know the difference between a source and an interpretation. Even though they might look similar on an exam paper, they're both in a box labeled as a source or an interpretation, they're very different types of information, and you need to know how to handle them differently. Also, another top tip, when you're using sources and interpretations in your answer, make sure you say which one you're using. Don't leave the examiner guessing which one you're trying to refer to. Say things like source A says or interpretation 1 claims. If you just say the source or the interpretation, well, then the examiner might not understand which one you're talking about. And the final top tip is also useful on every exam, but really important on this one. Aim to write something for every question. Even if you're not 100% certain, it's better to put some general knowledge down about the topic and put something general that you know, rather than leaving a question blank. Every mark counts, and an answer with general knowledge might still get some marks, whereas a blank answer can't get any marks. So let's turn our attention to the exam questions. As we said, in this section, we're going to be talking about section A. We'll do section B in another video to follow up. Section A has 2 questions. The first question will always be about making inferences from a source, and it will say, give 2 things you can infer from source A about, and then it will name a topic. Now that source will be in the exam booklet itself. The other sources and interpretations for later on will be in a separate booklet, but you'll find this source there in the exam booklet. It's worth 4 marks, and so when you're talking about dividing your time up, it's a good idea to think about giving this question 5 minutes, or if you've got extra time, 6 minutes. The second question is very similar to ones you've seen on other exam papers. It's about explaining causation. It will start explain why, and there'll be 2 stimulus points or bullet points to help you get started on the question. This is worth 12 marks, just like it is on the other exam papers with similar questions. And so we recommend you spend about 20 minutes, or with extra time, 25 minutes. So Katie, perhaps you could take us through the first of those questions, the source inference.
Of course. Right, so let's have a look at question 1 then. So this will be the first question when you open your exam paper. As Ben's rightly said, what you'll have is on the left-hand side, you'll have your source, and that can be a visual source, so something like a photograph or a cartoon or a poster, or it could be a written source. It will always be contemporary to the period though. So really helpfully, the exam board has given you a writing frame to help you structure your answer. They're asking you to make an inference. So what is an inference? Ultimately, it's what can you work out from the source? What can you conclude about the particular topic? And it's asking you to do this twice. So what can you infer? I can infer X, and then what detail from the source you are using to support that. So let's take a look at a source. This question here is asking you to give 2 things you can infer from source A, the photograph, about the Hitler Youth. You may wish to pause the video here and see what inferences you can make from the photograph. It's really important, as Ben said in the top tips, to focus on what the question is asking. It's asking you here to focus on the Hitler Youth. It's not asking you to focus on Nazi Germany more generally, or on general kind of youth policies. It's specific to the Hitler Youth. So you want to make sure that your answers are focused on that. As I said, the source can be a photograph or it can be a written source as well. So make sure that you practice with both. Let's now have a look at what a good answer would look like. You can see here this student has inferred the Hitler Youth showed discipline. And how have they worked that out? What evidence have they used from the source? Well, they've stated that they are standing in orderly lines. If we quickly look back at the source, we can see that the student has correctly identified that the children in the photograph are standing in orderly lines. Therefore, this is a valid inference. But where do a lot of students go wrong? Well, it comes around the use of own knowledge. So should you use your own knowledge in this question? Absolutely not. An inference is just using what the source is presenting to you. So although this student is factually correct in what they're saying, the Hitler Youth would watch people to see whether they're obeying the rules, you can't work that out from the source, so you wouldn't get any marks for that. And although the source detail is correct, because the inference isn't correct, this student wouldn't be awarded any marks. So be careful not to make that mistake. Let's move on to look at question number 2, the explain why question. We've covered this one in previous videos, so I'll just use one example to highlight what you need to do. A quick look back at the mark scheme. We have to look at your AO2, your analysis, and as you can see, limited analysis for a level 2, some for a level 3, and consistent use of analysis for level 4. We're looking at your knowledge as well, so some in a level 2, good in a level 3, and wide-ranging and precise in a level 4. And what we mean by that is that you're covering the full date range and you're being as accurate and precise as possible. Let's take a look at a sample question. Explain why the Montgomery bus boycott succeeded in achieving its aims. So this is from the USA topic. Whichever topic you're studying, the question will be laid out the same. You can see here I've underlined where it says explain why, and that will always be the stem of this question. It's asking you, why did it happen? You need to focus on the causes here. You need to cover 3 areas of content as well to make sure that you're being able to access the higher levels of the mark scheme. The focus of this question is on the Montgomery bus boycott succeeding, and that's the bit that we would expect to see repeated throughout your answer to really show the examiner that you're focusing on the question. You're given 2 stimulus points or 2 bullet points to help you out. You can choose to use them in your answer, but as it says in bold, the examiner's told you you must remember to use your own information as well. The examiners are choosing these to help you. You don't have to use them though if you don't know what they're about. So don't worry if you don't understand them. But let's have a look now at an answer. This here is only part of an answer, so I would suggest you pause the video and read this paragraph and try and identify where the student is analysing and where they are successfully using their own knowledge. I've highlighted here where the analysis is. We've talked previously about really useful phrases that can demonstrate analysis. This student here starts really focused on the question. They understand that it's about causes. So they begin, one reason that the Montgomery bus boycott was successful because. So that's a really clear focus on the question and begins analysing from the start. Phrases such as so, this meant that, are all really useful to get into your answer. Obviously, what you say around them matters as well. So let's look at where the knowledge is really strong in this answer. You can see here in the blue, this is specific factual detail that the student has used. And in green, this is the part of the question, Montgomery bus boycott succeeding, that the student has repeated throughout their answer. It's a really strong paragraph as part of an overall answer and demonstrates a clear line of reasoning, that they're focused on the question and they've provided specific factual detail. So this student, if they kept going at this rate, would be getting up the higher end of the mark scheme. This is the end of the section A video for paper 3, the modern depth study. There is another video that looks specifically at section B for paper 3, so do make sure to watch that, and good luck with your revision.